Subai wondered if this meant that this guy had also suffered the fate of betrayal. He cautiously entered some dark and dusty room. Right in front of him lay a wounded girl who was being mercilessly devoured by a zombie, and she called out Subai's name in a weak voice. He immediately rushed to save her because this scoundrel was about to devour her whole. The year was 3204 outside northern celestial region, a city called Bodhi. A certain guy confidently said that if he could repel the final blow of the divine storm, nothing would be able to stop his ascension, because today, Subai would finally enter the heavenly courtyard and become an immortal. At that very moment, some mysterious girl stood in front of the shining portal. She addressed the Lord of the Underworld, the Spirit of Fire, the Crown of Light, the luminary of the universe, the only drop that flooded the earth, and the cut that reached the heart, calling on everyone to rise with her. Under his power, she summoned a divine storm without delay. She spoke of sacred thunder and inevitable lightning. The main character was instantly attacked by furious and merciless lightning. The girl slowly began to approach him, her gaze shining with cold determination. She reported that his disciple Lin Wangi told him to surrender without further resistance. The protagonist asked if she really dared to interfere with his ascension, if she thought he would not have the resolve to kill her, or if she was wrong. Besides, does she really believe that she can handle him in this battle? It was at that moment that her words pierced him straight into the heart like a hot blade. At that moment, the man who attacked him told Sister Lin that it was wrong to bully your own teacher so cruelly. Even though he was guilty of 1,000 sins, he had to leave for the next world with some dignity left, and the protagonist was shocked to see Bai behind him. All this time, he never underestimated them and could not even imagine that one day they would dare to betray him. In that case, he was ready to do something no less terrible. The protagonist began to release his power and said that in this case, he would take them with him into eternity. At that very moment, something happened, and he was pressed even deeper into the ground, depriving him of the ability to resist. The main character didn't even have time to take a single action. He realized that it was a falling copper coin, and even Xiao Er was with them. He asked where the others had gone and why the first and fifth had not shown up. The girl replied that the teacher resisted for a long time, but the number of his crimes was impossible to count. She claimed that he deserved such a cruel and shameful end. Let him not dare now blame anyone else for this but himself. The guy began to smile crookedly after these words, holding back the approaching laughter. Then he burst into loud and wild laughter. The guy did not stop laughing loudly and angrily at that moment. He asked if his crimes were really countless, and if the attached charges were also added to the list or what. And yet there was something else hidden beyond this. They underestimated him too much, considering him weak. He didn't know what exactly they were planning, but if they were planning to take his life, he wouldn't let it go. Of course, the guy wasn't going to put up with it that easily. He began to release his true soul form and activated the law of the universe. Let them all go to hell with him, he will spare no one. They knew something terrible was happening, as the teacher's true soul form was about to destroy everything around them, and someone was panicking and asking where the older brother had gone, as he should have had a backup plan, but no one was talking about it. They began to beg the teacher to stop and not to do something irreparable. Everyone immediately rushed towards him, hoping to somehow stop him. Following this, a powerful explosion thundered, tearing apart everything around. At that moment, the main character woke up in some unfamiliar room. He didn't understand where he was, whether he was lying down or had already gotten out. This place surprised and confused him incredibly. When he looked out the window, he heard desperate cries for help. People begged to be saved because zombies were roaming around, and they hoped that at least someone would come to their aid. He realized that he was in the midst of an apocalypse. Zombies were rampaging, and he himself seemed to have been reborn or ended up in another world. The main character noticed something strange and important. He couldn't understand why they did it and what benefit they got from his death. The guy decided that he would not think about it anymore. Now, all he could do was lie there and hope that one day he would start training again and return to the world of cultivators. And when he returns, he will certainly teach them a harsh lesson. With his current level of spiritual core, it seemed entirely possible. Even starting from scratch, he will quickly succeed, reaching the peak of his form very soon. The hero suddenly opened his eyes as if from an unexpected insight. The guy couldn't understand where his spiritual energy had gone, why he couldn't feel it anymore. Had it really gotten to the point where he had completely stopped feeling it? The main character slowly extended his hand forward, as if trying to feel something invisible. Then he clenched his hand into a tight fist, trying to gather the last of his strength. He couldn't understand if there really was no spiritual weaving in this world. The guy was at a loss as to how this was even possible, because in that case, Not only cultivating, but simply surviving in this world would become extremely difficult. At that moment, a girl entered the room with a guy. They hurriedly slammed the door behind them, as if hiding from something terrible. She said that the horror outside was so terrible that she almost died. The guy hugged her and asked what she had to be afraid of since he was nearby, and it would be bad if her real boyfriend saw another guy touching her. The guy showed her his body and asked if it didn't excite her even more. And what could that idiot do if he found out everything? Then he roughly pushed her onto the bed. She noticed a wound on his arm and asked where it came from, to which he replied that he had been bitten by those same street lunatics and that she should not worry about it. The guy decided to get down to business, although the girl clearly didn't want it. But at the very moment when he paused for a moment, she asked him why he was doing this and demanded that he explain himself. At that moment, the guy began to rapidly turn into a zombie. This frightened the girl extremely, but it was too late to do anything. Of course, he immediately pounced on her, but she began to resist fiercely. She pushed him away with her feet just as he was already close. The protagonist heard a noise coming from nearby and could not understand if there was anyone else there. Judging by the fragments of memories, it could have been his girlfriend and her lover. It turns out that this guy was also betrayed, or everything is not so simple. It was at that moment that he saw before him a picture of a girl looking at him in fear and calling him by name. She begged him to save her because this bastard was about to eat her. The main character looked at her calmly without any emotion. The girl cried out to him until the very end, asking for help. She started calling him a bastard and demanding that he help her. He wondered if he could buy himself some time to escape if he just left her to die. As they parted, she promised that her ghost would never leave him alone. The main character understood that he needed to get out urgently, otherwise at this rate he would die and never return to his world. The protagonist began to prepare for escape, intensely thinking over the plan. The guy realized that he had to give it his all. He wondered if he could find anything suitable in his consciousness, but at his current level he wouldn't be able to use even a simple 9-soul ball. Subai was furious at this desperate situation. The guy understood that now he would have to rely only on the will of fate. The next moment, a low-level magic weapon, the 10,000 Souls banner, appeared in front of him. The hero was extremely surprised when he saw him in front of him. He simply threw it aside, deciding that he had no need for this useless junk. It would be better to get the armor. The 10,000 Soul system activated at this moment. The main character was interested in this system because he remembered that it was capable of collecting souls. But what to do with them next remained a mystery. This system could absorb the souls of the dead and convert them into spiritual energy. The higher the level of the system, the more powerful souls it can absorb. The hero remembered that the soul remains in the body of a dead person for only 5 minutes, which means that even without spiritual weaving, souls can be transformed into spiritual energy. With so many zombies roaming the streets, he'll definitely have a chance to cultivate. At that very moment, he heard someone start knocking furiously on his door. It was zombies. Subai opened the doors and looked at them carefully with a cold gaze, assessing the situation. He said that he would help them finally rest in peace, giving them the peace they had long awaited. Subai swung his weapon and slowly began to approach the zombie, showing no fear at all. The next moment, he killed them with one precise and powerful move, leaving them no chance. Subai stretched out his hand and began to use his weapon at full power, releasing all his strength. It was indeed very effective in terms of weapon use, causing admiration for its power. After this, the two zombies fell silently to the floor, completely immobilized and dead. Subai quickly took out the weapons from their corpses, preparing for the next battle. He asked if they thought he was some kind of loser, laughing at their futile attempts. At that moment, the weapon began to glow brightly with a blinding light filling with power. Subai began to collect the souls of the defeated zombies, as if absorbing their energy. Suddenly something happened, and he realized that he had received a powerful boost to his abilities. At this time, people on the street were seized with panic because the zombies were relentlessly catching up with them, forcing them to run to the safe zone. Meanwhile, the main character calmly walked down the street, as if not noticing the chaos around him. The guy understood that his powers were still too weak. Many things were inaccessible to him, and he urgently needed to increase his level by collecting 10,000 souls. At that moment, one of the zombies suddenly jumped straight at the woman, trying to grab her. She desperately said that she was not ready to die yet, because she had not walked as far as she wanted and could not die here. She then kicked some girl to distract the zombies from herself, saving someone else's life. The girl fell helplessly to the ground, and the main character immediately paid close attention to this. He couldn't tell if it was really Lin Wangi, his acquaintance. The guy couldn't understand why she ended up here in such a dangerous place. The protagonist called her by name, trying to get her attention. He said that she was an ungrateful student who deserved to die by his hand for betrayal. At that moment, he hit the zombie right away, thereby covering the girl from the attack. Subai immediately began to attack the zombies with incredible speed. He pierced him with one swift movement, giving him no time to resist. The girl lay on the ground and could not understand what had happened and why she was still alive. She was incredibly surprised by her rescue, as if she had miraculously survived. She wondered if this guy really saved her and why. Just recently, she almost finished him off with a divine storm, and now she gave in at the sight of a tiny monster. Subai said that she disappointed him with her behavior and weakness. The girl did not understand what he was talking about and was surprised how he knew her name. Then the girl slowly rose to her feet, trying to come to her senses. She thanked him for saving her and asked if they had met before. The main character looked at her in surprise, trying to comprehend the situation. He put the gun to her face and asked if she really thought she could act like a fool and play the victim. She started saying that this was not a soap opera, and it was unknown how many more monsters were roaming around the area. They needed to run immediately. The protagonist could not believe his eyes and wondered if he was mistaken. This was not the Wang Chi he knew. He thought it was impossible because this woman looked exactly the same, and he would not make such a mistake. Only if she didn't lose her memory during Rebirth, then this fact needs to be verified. The protagonist realized that his powers had no effect on her, which caused alarm. The girl smirked, seeing his confusion and helplessness. She suggested going with her to a large hypermarket nearby where she was planning to stock up on supplies. The protagonist thought about her proposal, weighing all the risks. He agreed and said that it was not such a bad idea and could help them survive. She grabbed his hand and said that they needed to hurry, because the sooner they got there, the more supplies they could take. The protagonist did not answer a word, remaining silent and focused. He decided to check whether she had really lost her memory or was hiding something. But in any case, the fact of her betrayal remained unchanged and a heavy burden. And she will definitely pay for this, no matter what the method. After a while, the girl quietly said that they were finally there and suggested going inside to take shelter. The guy and the girl carefully walked inside the building, looking around carefully. The protagonist stared at her, trying to read her thoughts and intentions. The girl admitted that in her haste, she had forgotten something and asked his name, hoping to restore his memory. The protagonist replied with a cold smile that it seemed like she wasn't even pretending, since she had completely forgotten his name. Then he turned around abruptly, hiding his emotions behind a mask of indifference. Later, the protagonist quietly said his name and thought that even if she lost her memory, he would not forgive her betrayal. She told him to follow her, assuring him that this place would be their refuge from danger. Here they will be able to wait for help for a short time, gathering strength. When she opened the door, she was overcome with horror. There were many zombies inside, surrounding them. The girl was very scared, not hiding her fear from the sudden encounter with monsters. She couldn't understand why there were so many of these crazy creatures here, ready to attack. At that moment, a voice was heard telling someone to get a customer card and get a 50% discount. Some monster seemed to be asking others if they needed a discount card. Then he wondered in surprise why everyone was refusing such a benefit. This monster killed all the zombies in its path, not allowing them to get closer. The main character felt an unusual energy and immediately realized that this was the very mutant that the system had mentioned. The girl began to persistently tell the gentleman that this place had already been captured by monsters and that they needed to escape urgently. She looked at him in surprise, not understanding why he was standing motionless. He calmly replied that it was just that way, and that he was the one who needed this monster for testing. In front of him stood that very terrible monster, ready for battle. It's time to test what a banner that has collected 10,000 souls is capable of. The protagonist threw his weapon up, and several monsters jumped out of it ready to attack. He gave the order for them to immediately deal with the advancing zombies. The monsters immediately rushed into battle, mercilessly destroying all enemies in their path. They killed without hesitation, demonstrating deadly efficiency. At that moment, some zombies snuck up behind one of the monsters. When the zombie tried to attack, the monster easily jumped up, dodging the blow. Then the second monster kicked him hard, knocking him off his feet. The partner grabbed the zombie tightly by the head, not allowing him to rise. After this, the monster began to literally tear him apart, giving him no chance of salvation. Just a second later, the zombie was torn in two and died. The monster repeated again the words about the need to get a customer card and receive a 50% discount. The protagonist immediately turned his attention to him, realizing the threat. He ordered the girl to step aside so that she would not be hit in the battle. At that very moment, the monster killed his subordinates, showing its ferocity. The main character realized that his spiritual energy would not last long, and he needed to deal with the monster quickly. Subai began to use some new, unknown technique, concentrating completely. He summoned his monsters again, who immediately moved forward, ready to fight. One of them quickly jumped into the air, preparing to attack. The monster was still talking about the map, as if not noticing what was happening around him. In 1 second, he easily killed the protagonist's protege, demonstrating his power. Subai realized that he had to deal with this monster immediately without delay. At this moment, the monster furiously pounced straight at Subai, giving him no chance to hesitate. Subai raised 2 fingers up, preparing to counterattack. Suddenly, the monster bit him on the neck, causing a painful blow. The monster then began to tear at his flesh, using all its strength and fury. Subai continued to fight with all his might, not giving up for a moment. He then approached the monster with his weapon in hand, ready to deliver the finishing blow. He commanded his weapon to grab the monster, intending to end this battle. Oddly enough, the weapon immediately chained the monster, preventing it from moving. After that, the weapon began to absorb him, as if sucking out his life force. The system congratulated the protagonist on killing the elemental mutant, and the system level increased to the 2nd. Now storing 5 more souls is available. To reach the 3rd level, the owner must kill an advanced mutant much stronger than the previous one. The protagonist understood that this was exactly the monster he was talking about, but his cultivation level was still not high enough. The girl quietly ran up to the guy from behind, fearing for his safety. She thought he was some kind of madman, but it turned out that he was just an incredible person with a strong will. The main character could not understand whether she was really his smart student or just pretending to be a fool. Some man started to loudly speak for other people to come out, saying that the monsters were finished. Now they could continue collecting supplies. Can't they wait until evacuation in safety? It looks like they'll be able to survive. Good thing there's food here. The girl happily informed the gentleman that they were now safe, because with such a large amount of food, they would definitely be able to wait for rescue. The man started shouting, "Who are they? Don't they know the rules? Whoever gets up first gets the slippers." The man claimed that this was his territory, and no one could just take these supplies. He sincerely thought that the others would give them the food just because they wanted it, not realizing what it cost them to get here. The girl became furious and began to say that they were only alive because Mr. Subai had killed all the monsters. The man couldn't believe it and asked how the bamboo stick could kill all the monsters, asking her not to make fun of him, believing that the monsters simply ate each other. After this, the girl became even more angry, unable to contain her emotions. Then she calmed down, collecting her thoughts. The protagonist said that the material goods of ancient times occupied a large place in the hearts of people, and words would not convince her. The girl said that he really did deal with the monsters, but she was still insulted for it. The main character, with a smile on his face, replied that only weaklings do this, but truth is always on the side of the strong. The protagonist turned to the others, showing determination. He stated that they needed these supplies and asked which of them was against it. Everyone started shouting that they were against it, telling him to look at himself and that he couldn't handle them alone. And it was true. Let him go and not bother them anymore. It's better not to anger them. The protagonist laughed furiously and told them to die then. Everything will go to him alone as soon as they are gone. They couldn't believe their eyes. The monsters realized that he was still alive and ready to fight. The protagonist pointed his gun straight at them, showing no fear. They began to say that they did not want to die, let him win, admitting their mistakes and getting ready to run. But it was too late. A second later, they were no longer alive. The rest looked at what was happening in horror, not believing their eyes. The protagonist asked if there was anyone else who wanted to object to him. Of course, after this, everyone suddenly fell silent, fearing the same fate. The protagonist asked the girl if she now saw that no one would dare to object to her, and suggested that she remove everything that was necessary. The girl thanked him sincerely for his support and protection. After that, she began to collect supplies, carefully choosing the most necessary ones. She looked at him after that, as if seeking approval. Then she asked if he needed anything else. The protagonist asked her if she had yet understood that in payment for saving her, she should carry supplies because it was only fair. He decided to test how good her acting skills were in such a situation. She replied with a smile on her face that he was absolutely right, and that he should wait a minute, and she would put his share in too. The main character looked at her in surprise, not expecting such a reaction. He thought that maybe things really weren't that simple with this girl. Maybe it was just a coincidence. After a while, the girl packed her backpack, carefully tightening the straps. She said she was ready, and asked what next. Would they stay here to wait for help or move on? The protagonist didn't answer, he just turned around, preparing for action. The guy said that he had to find a stronger zombie, and she would go after him with supplies. The girl agreed with him without objection, showing trust. The whole crowd was discussing how he had killed people without blinking an eye, and that emergency services would come to him because this criminal had to pay for his sins. One of them loudly said to stop chatting endlessly and immediately take apart the remaining supplies, hide as quickly as possible to attract new monsters. Everything was right. This way, they would be safe until help arrived. They immediately began to quickly and efficiently sort out the supplies, wasting no time. At that very moment, a sinister monster, quiet and dangerous, suddenly approached them. Of course, they did not notice his approach, as they were too busy in an endless argument about how to divide the supplies. They continued to argue desperately, trying to prove that this was what belonged to them. Someone insisted that he took it first, while another insisted that he would simply give him a club in return. One of the men calmly said that whoever saw it first could take it, so as not to waste his nerves on arguing. At that very moment, they turned back and saw something terrible and incredible. The man was very surprised, as if he couldn't believe his eyes, overcome with real shock and horror. He immediately collapsed to the floor, shocked to the depths of his soul and overcome with fear. He considered what was happening impossible and could not understand where these monsters suddenly came from. They immediately began to flee in panic, deciding that they still needed supplies to survive. But it was already too late. The monsters mercilessly killed everyone without exception. There was also a woman there who, in a panic, pushed the girl, trying to save herself. Until the last moment, she begged for someone to come to her aid and save her. It was the main character who decisively took responsibility and put an end to all these problems once and for all. To get rid of the threat, he had to nip it in the bud, because he could only control 3 souls at a time. If he were to face dozens of zombies right now, things would be much worse. He realized that he had to be as quiet as a mouse, extremely careful and unnoticeable. The girl begged him to wait, not to leave her alone in such danger. The protagonist replied that he was busy and had no time to chat, and she thought that he would never leave her, even if she was wasting his time. The girl confidently stated that she knew he would never abandon her in trouble. The main character only grinned when he heard these words, not hiding his slight skepticism. He said that they had nothing in common at all, so what was stopping him from just leaving? She replied that she knew the place where what he needed was, and that this was her main trump card. Of course, this immediately interested the guy. He listened attentively to her every word. The protagonist asked her if she knew where the advanced zombie was. Some time ago, she saw a mutant with an unusual aura near the school pond. She admitted that she didn't know if he was looking for him specifically, but the mutant looked extremely dangerous and stood out from the crowd. The protagonist thought about a mutant with an unusual aura and decided that they needed to check this information. He said, "Okay, she's not that useless. Let her show where exactly she saw him." She replied that if he wanted her to kill him, she had to get to him first and complete the task. After some time, they came to an abandoned school. The atmosphere was tense and ominous. The girl hid behind a tree and looked around carefully, trying not to give herself away. The protagonist asked why she suddenly stopped, since she had already found the mutant. She quietly asked him to be quiet, explaining that most of the school children had turned into zombies, and they wouldn't be able to deal with them if they drew attention to themselves. The main character couldn't understand why they couldn't cope. He didn't want to waste precious time. He slammed his weapon on the ground in irritation, showing determination and impatience. He ordered his ward to clear the way so that they could move forward safely. The girl asked how strong he was and whether he would be able to deal with the enemies. His controlled monsters began to clear the way, fighting the advancing zombies. The main character could not understand where zombies came from in this world and why people turn into them. He realized that somewhere nearby there might still be survivors, desperately fighting for their lives. The girl said that the voice of one of the guys seemed very familiar to her. At that moment, 3 guys were desperately fighting a crowd of zombies, protecting each other. One of them approached the main character, preparing to come to his aid. He screamed for this damn monster to finally die and stop torturing them. At that moment, he managed to deliver a strong, decisive blow to the zombie. However, this did not stop her. The zombie continued to attack mercilessly. The second guy saved them by engaging the monster and trying to hold back the onslaught. The third guy tried to cut off the zombie's head, hoping to stop it. The guy said that they needed to run quickly. They wouldn't be able to deal with these monsters for long. The girl started to say that it was Gu Ming and Liu Ming Han, but she couldn't understand why they were here, in such a terrible place. The main character asked her if she knew these guys, to which she replied that they were her classmates with whom she studied together. The protagonist asked her if she thought he should save them, because it was his duty. The girl suddenly grabbed his hand, squeezing his fingers tightly. She said they needed to move quickly while the monsters were distracted. If they managed to escape, It would be much worse if they were spotted. The protagonist asked if she was going to save them, because weren't they her classmates? The girl replied that if she could, she would definitely try, but now she couldn't put him in danger for their sake. The main character realized that she was not a traitor. Rather, she was an ordinary, simple girl who was simply afraid. At that moment, the guys noticed a girl in the distance trying to find a way out of the situation. They continued to scream, begging her to help, saying that they could no longer hold on and needed to be saved. She didn't understand whether he wanted them to be eaten with him. It seemed crazy to her. At that moment, the girl suddenly noticed something strange and dangerous. This surprised her greatly, and she looked tensely towards the source of the sound. She shouted that the monsters were coming towards them right now, approaching quickly and without mercy. The girl immediately began to apologize to the guy, realizing that everything could end badly. She repeated that it was her fault and continued to apologize with tears in her eyes. And most importantly, she told him not to interfere with her and to let her act in her own way. He calmly replied that he would call the ninth demon prince to deal with this. Could these rotting idiots really be a real hindrance to him? They were too weak to stop him, that was obvious. The protagonist summoned his monsters and ordered them to go forward, sparing no one. After that, a fierce battle with a crowd of monsters began, a full-scale battle. The main character and the girl simply stood to the side, watching the chaos unfold from afar. Several zombies immediately pounced on the monsters, trying to gnaw them. Immediately after this, the main character received a harsh notification that he had lost control of 2 zombies. He had not expected such a turn of events and was somewhat stunned. The guy realized that he couldn't cope with dozens of zombies now. He needed to urgently figure out how to get out of here. He realized that this was their only chance for survival, and the girl asked if there was anything she could do to help. The protagonist asked if there was anything nearby that made a loud noise to distract the zombies. At first, the girl did not understand what exactly he meant by the loud sound. She took out her phone and asked if it would be suitable for this purpose. The protagonist was confused and couldn't understand what she was even talking about. Then the girl pressed the button to turn on the music. At that moment, some song started playing about a little blue skirt and a ribbon, about Lyubachka, whom it seems everyone knows. On holidays, girls would gather in a circle and dance, cheerfully repeating the tune of the song. It really helped distract the zombies and redirect their attention. The main character said that it turned out to be a good magical artifact, although quite unusual. The guy then threw the phone straight into the sky behind the girl so that the zombies would reach for it. All the zombies immediately rushed after the sound, chasing the phone. But at that moment, one of the monsters rushed at the phone and smashed it into pieces. Subai ordered his monsters to charge forward, stopping at nothing. And so it happened. A furious battle began, full of noise and chaos. After that, nothing more was visible. What was happening remained a mystery. The girl didn't understand whether her phone was broken yet, but there was no signal anymore. Subai grabbed the girl's hand, holding it tightly. He told her not to stand there like a pillar and said that she needed to run, although she asked him to go slower. Something terrible and disturbing was happening at school at that very moment. The girl fell to the ground and almost collided with another person who also ran inside. She was very tired, almost without strength, but she tried to hold on. She thanked Subai again. Without him, she would already be dead, and he said that she helps him find an advanced mutant, and he in return saves her life. Everything was fair and just. At that very moment, 3 more people quickly entered, hurrying to hide from danger. They said among themselves that it was good that these creatures had escaped. Otherwise, they would have been eaten without mercy. The guy looked closely at the girl who was standing next to him and became interested in her condition. Everyone looked at Lin Wangi in surprise and were amazed that she was also able to escape from this hell. He asked her if she had returned with supplies and rejoiced with everyone else that they were now saved. Everyone immediately started looking into the backpack and rejoicing that there were so many useful things there. The girl, flushed with rage, asked what they were doing. Subai had gotten on her nerves and she couldn't let them control her. The guy responded angrily by saying that now was not the time for quarrels and greed. There are a lot of people here who need supplies to survive, and let her share. One of the guys added that there was no point in arguing. Everything was far from safe here. First we had to get to class, and then sort it out there. Then he told the main character that he could join them, because they needed strong guys for protection. After that, everyone went forward somewhere together, trying to keep up. Subai and the girl walked behind, looking around carefully. The girl apologized to him, asking him not to worry. She would not allow his supplies to be taken from him. The main character replied that everything was fine. The main thing was to find an advanced zombie, and it was still unknown whether they would listen to her at all. She said it wasn't a problem. There were teachers among the survivors, and they would be able to keep them under control. The protagonist chuckled quietly, assessing the situation. Then he warned them that it would be better for them not to show off and not to create unnecessary problems. The guy walking in front said that they had a whole bag of food. With such a supply, they would not be able to hold out for a month, and then help would arrive. The second guy replied that he knew this, but doubted that the girl would agree to give up the food, and what to do with it was unclear. The guy with glasses laughed, making fun of them. He said that this was their territory now, and he didn't think anyone could resist them, and if they behaved normally, he would leave them something. The guy knocked on the door and announced that it was Lo Ming Han and they had come with supplies. A woman came out to them, greeted them joyfully, and asked what they had brought. Once inside, one could see that many people had gathered there, hiding from danger. The protagonist understood that if they had been able to hold out until this point, it meant that there weren't many zombies in the area. The guy asked the girl to distribute supplies to everyone. They hadn't eaten anything for 3 days and were on edge. The girl agreed to this, realizing the importance of the situation. She began to say that she didn't know, but she could give away more than half of the supplies, and the other half belonged to Mr. Subai and could be left alone. The guy asked why he needed so much and said that if necessary, he could even pay for the food. The girl replied that he shouldn't worry. He would give him 10 times more and began listing the prices. The protagonist said that he had no objections and that it was reasonable. The guy realized that he was dealing with a smart and calculating person. It was at that moment that something suddenly appeared right in front of his face. The main character summoned his monster ready for battle and defense. No one could understand where this monster came from, and they thought that Min Han must have brought it. After all, they said that they should not be allowed in. At that very moment, the guy said that it seemed that the monster was summoned by the main character. The protagonist replied that it was he who killed 2 of his subordinates and even stole his supplies by blowing them into their faces. The boy then kicked the monster forward, trying to confuse it. After that, he stepped right on his chest, trying to suppress his resistance. The main character calmly began to talk to the guy and asked if he should kill him, if there were enough souls to replace the ones he had lost. The guy began to beg his friends for help, reminding them that they had come up with this idea together. Friends immediately stated that he was to blame for this and that they were not guilty of anything, asking to let them go. The guy was surprised. After all, it was he who did this for them, and now they were doing this to him, and he asked if they were really asking for mercy. The boy began to beg Wang Qi to help him, saying that he was wrong, would not touch anything, and only asked to forgive him. The protagonist was curious about what she would do. If Wang Qi had fled, she would not have begged him. At that moment, the girl thought, trying to make a decision. She began to say that even though Min Han was wrong, he still couldn't kill him by dividing only her part, leaving him whole and unharmed. The protagonist understood that her character did not match her behavior. She really just looked like her, and in that case, there was no point in dragging her along with him any further. The protagonist said that their deal was done. She found her friends, and it was time for them to say goodbye, because the advanced zombie should be somewhere nearby, and he would find it himself. The girl took his hand and asked him to wait a little, not to let her go so quickly. The girl calmly said that she knew the exact location of that monster, and he asked in surprise if she had seen it with her own eyes. The girl replied that no, but she clearly felt a strange, ominous presence in the cold walls of the school, and this frightened her greatly. She wasn't exactly sure that this was the monster he needed. The protagonist could not understand whether it was just an inner feeling or a real gift, because she was able to sense the spiritual energy of living beings. Only she could do this. So this is everything, even Wang Qi herself. It was a world of cultivators full of mysteries and dangers. Subai asked her if Ileana had found what he asked for. The girl calmly provided him with something, and with a slight hope asked if he would now take her as a disciple. Subai slowly picked it up, examining it with interest. He asked her carefully where exactly she found it. At that moment, the girl cracked her fingers as if emphasizing the seriousness of the moment. She then confidently said that she was born with the ability to sense energy, and from now on she would become a faithful and powerful weapon in his hands. The protagonist said with a slight smile that it was good. From this day on, she would be his second student, and with her ability, she would be able to become much stronger than many. She said that he saved her life, and she could not even dream of such a chance. She wants to serve him faithfully and truly. The protagonist slowly lowered himself towards her, showing respect and attention. Then he gently placed his finger on her chin, forcing her to look at him. He asked if she would now call him sir, showing the seriousness of his proposal. He didn't understand why she decided to forget her memories, but it didn't matter. Now she had to die. The protagonist quietly said to himself that his dear student would become his devoted servant. At that moment, she suddenly grabbed his hand, showing determination. She begged him to believe that the aura was heading straight here, and they needed to run, or it would be too late. Subai looked at her in surprise, not expecting such words. Then he started laughing loudly, as if he found the whole situation funny. Subai continued to laugh, not hiding his skepticism. He almost killed her, but her ability was unique. It would be stupid to lose such power. Now it is better to make a pawn out of Wang Qi, and when she is no longer useful, he will find a place for her in his banner of 10,000 souls. At that moment, some kind of monster actually appeared on the street, causing panic. He said that here was a source of spiritual energy. Luck was on his side, and if he didn't recharge himself, he would become one of those half-destroyed creatures. He confidently told himself that he had not failed and had completed the task. Just at that moment, he broke through the wall of the building, creating a powerful passage. Subai couldn't tell if Wang Qi was talking about him. He looked like a mutant lizard, and something about him seemed strange. His aura looked too familiar. No one understood what this strange creature was, but what difference did it make? Let them run, otherwise they would all die. No one could understand why the doors did not open, adding to the fear. The girl said that she saw this very monster at the lake and remembered its aura. The protagonist thought it was impossible. This creature really does have spiritual energy flowing through it. It's not a zombie, but a monster from the world of cultivators, but how could it end up here? The creature said that there was little spiritual energy in this world, and there were these brainless idiots walking around. Everything here was much more fun than in the world of cultivators, and that was true. It could easily devour an entire squad of people without fear of interference from the devil's soul. One of the people desperately screamed that he did not want to die and asked for help. The woman approached the guy and tearfully asked him to save her students, promising to do anything. The protagonist replied that whether he could or not was not important. It was better for him to say what benefit he would receive from saving their lives. She began to beg that she would pay any amount of money if only he would save them. The main character apologized and said that he was not interested, but not to worry. After death, he would take care of their souls. And it was at that moment that the creature ate the man with a terrible growl. At that very moment, the protagonist's protege entered into battle with him. He struck one blow after another, giving the enemy no chance. After a series of powerful attacks, he delivered the final blow. The lizard fell instantly, unable to resist. The monster was right below him, defenseless. He then grabbed the monster by the head, squeezing it tightly. Immediately after this, the lizard woke up and came to its senses, trying to resist. He immediately began to defend himself, trying not to let her escape. Then he literally grabbed the monster with his tongue, not letting it escape. He asked about spiritual energy, because his sense of smell had never failed him before. It was incredible that a cultivator had ended up here in such a strange place. Although the energy is hardly enough, even this is quite enough for the current situation, and this gives at least some hope. The monster began to act actively, trying to get out of this cunning trap, which forced us to tensely watch his every move. It landed right in front of the protagonist, creating a sense of imminent danger and tension in the air. The guy asked if the monster had decided to attack him now, because now he would definitely have to deal with it seriously. It was just a basic monster, and he would have dealt with it in a split second before, but now the level of spiritual energy was clearly lower than before. How could he forget about those people? They could still be useful to him. If he killed and absorbed their souls, he could break through the danger. The main character began to say that, unfortunately, they did not have enough strength to save them now, so they would have to get out of it themselves, showing ingenuity and courage. However, if they became part of the 10,000 Souls banner and helped him deal with this creature, the three friends would have at least a sliver of hope for salvation. Of course, they could refuse because they couldn't stop him if he wanted to leave, and that added to the anxiety. The protagonist wanted to hear some kind of answer from them, hoping for support and determination. He said that since no one wants to sacrifice themselves, then he can't do anything about it and will have to go on alone. At that moment, the woman approached the girl decisively and quickly. She began to say that she would do everything possible to get his students out of here, leaving no hope of salvation. She had something unusual and interesting hanging around her neck that immediately attracted attention. The protagonist immediately realized that it was a spiritual stone, a rare and powerful artifact. He quickly walked over, grabbed the stone, and asked where she got it, showing curiosity and caution. She replied that her father had found this stone many years ago, passing it down from generation to generation. The girl immediately began to remove the stone as if preparing to give it into his hands. He said that he could take the stone if she liked it, but asked in return to save her children. This thing was definitely from her world and was of quite high quality, a real high-grade spiritual stone, rare and valuable. The main character just couldn't understand how he ended up in this world, which means that his and Lin Wangi's reincarnation was not an accident at all. In that case, it is quite possible that the rest of his students also ended up here in this strange world. The system reported the activity of the spiritual stone and asked if he wanted to use it. Using the stone would increase the level of the banner by 10,000 souls and increase the possible number of controlled creatures. The guy realized that with its help, he could directly pump the system, and for this, he would need to melt more. Subai said that this would be enough for now. He gave his consent and told everyone to wait here, strictly forbidding them to run away. The lizard was furious and loudly asked if its presence was being ignored, showing anger and irritation. How dare he? The lizard thought, considering the damn cultivator-worthy prey, and was sure that she would devour him. The protagonist ordered the monster to guard him, giving clear instructions to act decisively and strictly. The monster immediately went into battle and began to fight with the furious lizard. He attacked her at that moment, using all his strength and agility. The lizard did not feel that he was an equal rival and dismissively declared that he was just a small fry. Subai began to meditate, concentrating his energy and strength for the upcoming battle. The lizard immediately turned its attention to the guy, assessing his strength and intentions. She noticed that the guy's aura was getting stronger and wondered what he was doing, but decided not to get distracted. Her task was to stop him at any cost. The lizard began to say that he was a pathetic bug, unworthy of a fight. She wanted the monster to finally destroy him, decisively and mercilessly. The impact was so strong that the monster broke through the roof of the building and flew out into the street with a deafening roar. The lizard said that he would see what the guy would say to that, showing confidence and challenge. She started approaching him, threatening him and telling him to die. At this point, the protagonist abruptly ordered her to shut up, demonstrating control and confidence. He explained that his system needed a victim, and this very victim will be she, the lizard. The lizard did not understand what was happening at all, overcome with bewilderment and anger. At that moment, the monster seized her with a siege, squeezing with inhuman strength. The monster was now evolved. Its spiritual sea had turned into a powerful spiritual core, giving it incredible strength. The protagonist ordered the monster to kill the lizard, giving it no chance of salvation. The monster immediately grabbed her by the throat, squeezing tightly, as if wanting to take her life at that moment. The lizard didn't even have time to do anything, finding itself completely helpless. After this, the monster drank it and climbed onto the roof, demonstrating cruelty and determination. At the height, he grabbed the lizard and carried it in some direction, not giving it time to come to its senses. He continued to attack her harshly at this moment, giving no mercy. Then he pushed her forward with all his might, throwing her into the unknown with all his strength and determination. But the lizard managed to grab hold of the cliff and miraculously held on. He was incredibly lucky and did not fall back, as if saved by fate. When he got out, he started saying that he had underestimated him, that he hadn't expected him to become stronger right during the fight, and that he was genuinely surprised. But was he underestimating him again now? He asked with growing doubt. He started ordering some family to kill these people, harshly and mercilessly. At that moment, zombies appeared and began to kill people, suddenly and mercilessly. One of them answered the lizard that he obeyed him unconditionally and devotedly. Everyone recognized the guy as Minhan and said that he was a murderer, with anger and fear. The guy just let his victim go to the floor and she didn't fall, surprisingly and strangely. He started saying that they were bio-garbage. He endured it for too long. But he didn't think that it would all end like this, with bitterness and anger. Of course, everyone looked at the guy with fear, overcome with horror and confusion. He started killing them. They screamed that they didn't want to die, begged him to let them go, and he said that managing lives was like managing ants, and it was so cool, cold, and merciless. The woman did not understand how it all came to this, with anxiety and confusion. The girl began to ask the guy what Lee Min-han's lips were with excitement and hope. The main character was surprised. He did not expect that someone would decide to voluntarily know the monster consistently, with curiosity and caution. The more he kills, the better. After all, they won't just be packs of his banner, but a real force ready for battle. At that moment, the woman stopped the guy and said that he shouldn't do that, with firmness and hope in her voice. He grabbed her and told her that it was not up to her to decide whether she wanted to die too or not, with cold cruelty and threat. Well, that's what he said. She has no desire. Let her remember that forever. At that moment, someone suddenly saved her, appearing out of nowhere, quickly and decisively. Lin Qing asked her if there was a way to calm everyone down, because if they panicked, they wouldn't be able to survive, and their only chance was the master. with anxiety and despair in his voice. He knew he didn't care about the others, but this woman had to survive. She would show him where to get the spiritual stone, with importance and determination. Subai decided to use his weapon, gathering all his strength and will into his hands. He began to call upon souls slowly and powerfully, as if summoning ancient powers. The guy didn't understand what it was, with surprise and wariness. He was furious to see the main character again. Now he was completely different from before. Now he had become much stronger and more dangerous. So what will he do now without his monster? The lizard chuckled, not believing in his strength. Subai just laughed at him, confident in his strength and his monsters. He ordered the monsters to kill him. After all, these were the people he himself had once mercilessly destroyed. They said they would become brothers in the banner of 10,000 souls, and he promised that they would be together until the end of their days, and so it would be, with iron determination. The guy couldn't understand how this was possible. Hadn't he killed them all? Brainless Sambucas, he just didn't have time for them, with irritation and distrust. But they still continued to kill him slowly, stubbornly, and mercilessly. They started screaming for him to finally die with anger and hatred. The lizard did not understand what kind of banner of 10,000 souls or something like that was, with bewilderment and fear. She asked him if he was going to fight him with this trash. Who did he even take him for? In a contemptuous and sarcastic tone. The protagonist asked what trash meant. He had no idea who he was, with cold confidence and defiance. "He's not with us, we still need stew like him," he said, expressing disdain. The lizard began to scream for the master to save her in despair and panic. The lizard didn't understand what kind of failure it was. He finally found a cultivator, but he was far from weak, a strange creature. It seemed like he was in serious danger with anxiety and surprise. Besides, he had already formed a spiritual core. It was better for him to run, but if he didn't get spiritual energy, he would also have a hard time, with anxiety and uncertainty. He began to beg the master to save him in complete despair and fear. Then he simply grabbed it, decisively and sharply. The guy asked the gentleman what he was doing, to which he replied that he had given him power. So now, he must repay him, with a serious tone and expectation. At that moment, he flew straight into the wall, landing the main character abruptly, with power and precision. The lizard realized it was time to take things seriously, with growing fear and tension. The protagonist asked him if he wanted to run away, with a cold mockery. "Does he really think I'll let him do this?" he asked, full of confidence and challenge. The monsters immediately went straight after him at that moment, quickly and mercilessly. The lizard was very surprised, amazed, and confused. At that moment, the monster rushed straight at him with wild fury and strength. The entire building collapsed in a second with a roar and dust. The protagonist was glad that he had finally caught it, with triumph and relief. At that moment, all of the main character's subordinates appeared as if from nowhere, decisively and suddenly. The monster continued to attack the lizard mercilessly and furiously. The girl said it was good. The lizard was finally caught, with relief and joy. He shouted that he had lost the battle today, but did the boy think that would hold him back, with defiance and anger? He said that never in his life would it hold him back, with confidence and stubbornness. He separated himself from his work and began to say that they were a bunch of naive fools. Not only golden cicadas can change their scales, he can molt too, with bitterness and mockery. The guy started asking him to wait. He was still here alone, with hope and anxiety. At that moment he stopped, suddenly and warily. He was told that the heavens had never killed anyone. He had destroyed so many of them. Does he think he can get away with it, with threat and contempt? He couldn't believe that they would actually kill him, with surprise and disbelief. The girl began to ask the gentleman if he would just leave him like that. "Is it normal or what?" with doubt and fear. Subai said, looking at them with arrogance, that this was just a low-level shift demon, and no matter how hard they tried, he would be able to escape from their influence deity with mockery and confidence. The guy decided that it was time to put an end to this farce decisively and firmly. The lizard was nearby at that moment, curious and anxious. He was glad that he had finally escaped and wondered where a cultivator could have come from in such devastation. Could it really be that he himself had been carried into this chaos, with surprise and confusion? But he didn't care. When he chose, the sky would be as high as a crow's flight, and the sea would be as wide as a fish's leap, and no immortal cultivator would be able to find it in his life, with pride and dreaminess. At this moment, Subai turned to him with cold determination and challenge. He asked if he was trying to escape, and suggested that he try to get out of the range of his divine consciousness, with mockery and threat. The lizard said that it was impossible. How could he find him when he only had the initial level? How could he be so strong, with amazement and disbelief? the guy said, and he fell silent with cold confidence. He then ordered the monsters to capture him decisively and mercilessly. Everyone immediately pounced on him quickly and fiercely. They literally chained him to the wall, with force and hopelessness. One of the monsters struck him at that moment, suddenly and powerfully. Subai watched him become completely immobilized, but he saw that he was still resisting with annoyance and determination. He began to say that they were all creatures and would regret having gotten involved with him with threats and anger. At that moment, he began to use his power, concentrated and powerful. Then there was an explosion, deafening and bright. He began to laugh and say that he had 10,000 souls under his control. Once he stepped onto the path of cultivation, he would swallow up all these useless seeds with madness and confident anger. The protagonist said it was reckless with condemnation and alarm. After that, he pierced the lizard completely, quickly and decisively. He said that it was impossible. Even the purest consciousnesses do not recognize his clones, with amazement and distrust. He didn't understand who the guy was with confusion and curiosity. The main character said that he would have already sent him to his forefathers, if not for his drop of benefit, with darkness and doubt. The lizard noticed the soul flow, sealing him with alarm and horror. He assured the boy that he could not be broken. He would not bow down even to death, with determination and pride. He promised that the boy would go to the grave with him, with cruelty and threat. The protagonist asked if he was pouring out all these dying speeches with mockery and coldness. He thought he didn't exist or something like that, with bewilderment and sarcasm. He was very surprised that it was a divine power, with amazement and admiration. He could not understand whether the image of the master appeared before him with doubt and trepidation. Immediately after this, he began to beg not to kill him. He was wrong and asked for mercy with despair and fear. Of course, the main character did not want to spare him with cold determination. The entire system congratulated him on acquiring a new creature. The level of 10,000 souls was raised, now the third number of controlled creatures, 5 out of 10, with triumph and delight. With the level increase of 10,000 souls, the advanced mode is unlocked. It can impose any item with spiritual power on the undead, thereby raising the level of the undead itself. It was an unexpected and pleasant gift, with surprise and joy. He didn't think that he could give the spirit stone directly to the undead. Didn't that mean that the spirit stone was enough to quickly create a strong undead army, with calculation and hope? In such a case, the search becomes the main task on the agenda, with determination and purposefulness. He will wait patiently until he has accumulated enough means to defend himself in this harsh world, and then it will be time to find worthy disciples. The woman asked Wang Qi what her companion had done, anxiously asking if he had gone after that monster. Wasn't that too dangerous? She told Master Li not to doubt. Master never had any problems. Such a monster was no match for him. Okay then. She seemed to trust him very much. Since he doesn't go to their school, how does she know him? She explained that when she was running out of school, she was attacked by these monsters, but the gentleman managed to save her. However, it was still strange because at their first meeting, it seemed to her that she had already met him before. Just at this moment, Subai returned. When the girl asked if he had been hurt, Subai replied that she had stopped and did not understand why she was being so polite. The main character began to take a stone out of his pocket. He said he needed more of these stones and asked if she knew where he could find them. She apologized and said that it was related to her family's religion. Maybe her father knew, but she wasn't sure. Let him ask him himself. The protagonist asked where her father was, and she said that if he really wanted to find his father, they would have to make a deal. The last time she spoke to him was 3 days ago. He was trapped somewhere and waiting to be rescued, and if he wanted to get information, she was afraid that she would have to find him with her first. The protagonist didn't understand whether this woman wanted to use him to save people while there was a team, or whether he would be able to get the spiritual stones because the time spent matters. The main character said that in that case he would go with them. But if it turns out that she is lying to him, he will kill not only her, but also her father. She said fearfully that she knew and that he shouldn't worry, that he should believe her, that his father wouldn't let him down. She began to tell the boys to get up and walk with Mr. Subai. Then one of them started talking about his dead friends. The main character also paid attention to them. He couldn't waste any more time. The main character began to summon spirits. Many chains immediately appeared from the weapon. They captured these people instantly. Then their souls began to approach the weapon. A notification came that the number of controlled creatures was now 10 out of 10. The main character looked closely at the weapon. The woman couldn't understand what he had done. The protagonist said that he used them for their intended purpose. He placed them in the banner of 10,000 souls so that they would be useful in the future. Now they can go and will not waste time. They thanked him and said that without him, they would not have gotten out of the classroom. If they hadn't killed the monster, they would have died of hunger, but everything was fine. The main thing is that they took everything they needed. The protagonist also noticed that when his cultivation had passed the first stage of the divine consciousness zone and had recovered, it was now possible to search for higher-level artifacts. He decided to take a look and hope to extract something useful. The main character began to look for something useful for himself. Then he felt something. He could not understand whether the thing really had divine power. The girl asked where he got this sword from, feeling as if she had seen it before. The protagonist realized that her memory was returning to her. He wondered if she would regain her memory and find that it had fallen into her hands like a lamb under a spell. And how would the student react to this? The protagonist said that in that case, he wanted to give her the sword for safekeeping. The girl began to say that she couldn't. He didn't want her to have anything to do with monsters. The protagonist asked why this artifact would constantly provide her protection. The girl looked at him in surprise. And she agreed with him, saying that she didn't know how, but if he taught her, she would agree. At that moment, something happened to the weapon. Then some kind of realization came to her. At that moment, she remembered all the memories with the main character. Naturally, her surprise knew no bounds.